So let's give the viewers just a quick high level overview. So you started investing in like '09. When did you buy your first property?
Yeah, around '09, I would say.
Okay.
Yes,
And
that's my
and
first property in the US. Yes.
okay. And then today, how many apartments, how many doors do you guys
We
own?
are around 360 doors, I would say.
Giddy up.
That's a lot.
Awesome.
Good
Awesome.
job. Yeah.
And how many syndications have you, and you're syndicating for each deal individually, right? So how many syndications have you guys closed since then?
So we have only done one syndication so
Okay.
far, and we closed that one on February the 1st.
Congrats.
Before we were doing joint ventures between Zaba and I and maybe one other partner. And before the joint venture, this was just predominantly me.
Got it. And so how many doors do you own individually?
I would say just over 200.
Okay, so you individually own about 200 apartments
Yes.
in the Chicago area, right?
Yes.
And then so you got a good experience base already at operating these things, and then you started doing the joint ventures and now the syndication deals.
Yes. And when I started, I was using a third party management company. They had boots on the ground and they own and operate over 1,000 units. And their name is Sharp Rose, and the owner was Trent Anderson, very nice guy. So he kind of mentored me and showed me a little bit about property management, and that's when I kind of get curious into realizing that yes, if I could really do the property management in-house, then there would be lots of lessons learned, but also we could also save some money as well and use that money towards the scaling. So last year, we started to do in-house management where we utilize Appfolio property management software to manage our portfolio, and it's been very efficient since we have tenants being able to pay online, tenants being able to submit maintenance requests online. We have an entire feedback loop system where when a tenant submit a maintenance request, then we can also ask them for a review of our work. So it's really, there is a feedback loop involved. And first syndication, as I said, was actually closed this year.
And are you guys investing in the same area, or are you looking elsewhere in the country? Are you looking elsewhere in the city? Do you have a specific niche?
Yeah, so our strategy is to invest in growth markets, and we're also looking into opportunity zones as well. So we tend to invest in clusters. So we have one cluster that is close to the Midway Airport. And in this area, you have smaller buildings, say between 10 units to 20 units, but you have a bunch of single family homes as well in this area. Um, a lot of employment is high in the area due to Midway and other industries that are close by. We also have another cluster of properties very close to the lake. So these are what we call our point of interest, like the airport, for example, the lake, for example. And this is Lake Michigan. And in this cluster, we have, say, bigger units. So buildings up to 45 doors. And now we're also looking to form new clusters as well. So yes, we're looking forward to expand mostly in Chicago, but we're also evaluating other markets as well. Dallas, Texas, Houston, the Carolinas, Atlanta, Georgia. Those are under evaluation.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're kind of expanding beyond your core geographic competency right now. Is that
Yes,
what I'm hearing?
yes. And we are running evaluation now to identify property management services outside of Chicago and kind of ranking them and going through their reviews so that once we do acquisition in these other regions, then we, have a property management partner that we can piggyback on.
Got it. I'm curious how you ended up, getting the confidence to go invest in real estate like this. Because what type of product are you investing in? Like in 2009, 10, what did you buy? What type of asset was it?
So in 2009, the first acquisition was a condo. It was a garden unit, and this was on the north side of Chicago. So very good neighborhood. But as I said, it was a recession. So I think I paid maybe $50,000 for this unit. But I can tell you, it required a lot of work. It was completely molded, underwater. And I had to, find a contractor to kind of bring it up to market and to get it rented. But I never lived in this condo. It was always an investment for me. So yeah, go ahead, Larry.
So nicer neighborhood then. Like you started in like a nicer neighborhood. Did you buy this? Was it advertised off the MLS or did you buy it through a realtor?
Yeah, I bought it through a realtor, and I can provide a lot of details. So when I just moved to Chicago, I was looking for a place to live as a student that's here to do a PhD. But wherever I look for places, they would ask for my credit score. But I didn't have any credit scores yet because I just arrived. So then I had to show my bank statement to show my capabilities to pay the rent. So when I showed the realtor my bank statement, that's when she said, hey, she knows of a place where, I could kind of invest this money as well. So that's how we started to search for investment properties. And she kind of knew the land more than I do. She's been here for many, many years, maybe 20, 30 years. And she's the one that kind of helped me to select the property, helped me to identify a contractor, helped me to get the place rented and so on.
Got it. And then the next step was after you got through that one, what did you buy next?
Well, after I got through that one, then my approach was for me to kind of rent it out, forget about it, and focus on studying. So I kind of focused on studying for maybe a year or two, and I realized that the income from this property is really helping me to survive as a PhD student. And then I said, maybe it makes sense for me to kind of, invest into another property. So I would save up the rent from there, save up my stipend from the research assistant role as a student. And then my next acquisition was a 5-unit property that's very close to the university.
Good neighborhood, bad neighborhood, what type of
neighborhood? Yeah. Good neighborhood, very close to the university, around 5 minutes from downtown. Not as good of a neighborhood as where the condo was, but at the same time, in this neighborhood that I acquired, this 5-unit, there were a bunch of students, bunch of young professionals, and it's really, really close to downtown. And it was a good deal. I think I got a cash deal at that point, so I just kind of worked with a hard money lender.
I was going to ask you how you financed it, because a 5-unit is typically financed a little differently than a standard conventional loan, right?
Yes.
So you got a hard money loan, and then what did you do with that hard money loans aren't usually forever, right? So yeah. What did you do
then
after
maybe a year or so after, I was at work one day, and then the hard money guy just gave me a sudden call, and he was like, hey, did you know your loan kind of expires next week? I'm like, no, I didn't know. I thought this was much longer. But then I saved up enough money from stipends, and also from the first property, and from the rental of this new property. I had enough money to pay back the hard money lender the following week.
So that it sounds like, Jaron, right? This is pretty wild to hear somebody say, I saved up enough money from cash flow and my day job to pay for the whole property outright, right? And that quick. So the cash flow on these deals must be bananas. Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so the cash flow on this property was astronomical, and that's because I used a couple of those apartments for Airbnb at that time.
Oh, wow.
So I would rent out, it had 5 units. I would rent out a fraction to long-term tenants, and then I would rent out another fraction to Airbnb. And at that
What year was
time,
this? What
this
year?
was around 2012, around there.
You're ahead of your time, man. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, who was really on the Airbnb bandwagon at that moment?
12 years
Not many
ago.
people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was Airbnb was unbelievable at that time. At that time when people come to your Airbnb, even if you don't provide a shower curtain or a blanket, or if you don't have curtains, you would still get a 5-star review. But now things have changed a lot.
Now you need a butler. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you need to compete with the Four Seasons Hotel. So it has changed a lot.
Yeah. If we can just take a step back before we go maybe through some other deals here, I have 2 questions for you. Generally, what over the last, let's say, 5 years, maybe up to 10 years, what has been your type of property that you really have specialized in and you've invested in? And just to give you an example of what Larry and I do here in South Florida is we really love workforce housing. We like, I don't know, some people might call it Class C housing, Class C plus. It's not in bad neighborhoods. These are working class people. These are not people that have evictions on their record. They may not have high credit scores. Maybe they're in the 600s or even maybe in the 500s. I don't really pay too much attention to credit score personally myself. I just make sure they don't have evictions. They don't have bankruptcies. They're not no serious criminal records. And these are people that are working. These are working people. Neither Larry or I think I can speak for you, Larry, here is that I definitely don't do Section 8 housing. I don't believe Larry does either. So our neighborhoods are decent neighborhoods, but they're workforce, working class neighborhoods. So that's what we specialize in. What would you say that your assets are? And then the second question is, you mentioned that you're putting properties together in clusters. And if you could kind of explain the reasons for that and what the advantages are of having properties in a cluster.
And I'll just insert real quick. So there was a time where 50% of my portfolio was Section 8.
Oh, okay.
Now, because the market's changed a little bit and Section 8 can be annoying if you're not all in on it, in my opinion, it's I have like maybe 2 out of the 100 apartments that.
Yeah, I didn't think you were very much in that. I didn't realize that you were
away from it
years ago. Yeah.
But
I'll take the second question first in terms of why clusters. Well, since we're operating in-house management team, clusters help us with the management. If we have, say, 10 properties on the same block, then it makes our fixes, our construction upgrades, our janitorial operations, and our work orders in close proximity to each other. So we could have fewer people doing, more work orders because of the proximity. We're spending less time in traffic. Chicago is a very unfriendly city in terms of traffic. So we try to minimize the amount of time that we're driving around. And this is one strategy that helps us to really scale, utilize a small team, and still be very, very efficient. So it's like I would rather have, say, 10 properties on the same block than to have them distributed all over the state. It would be very challenging for us to go to all these properties. We would need more transportation, more people. It just makes management a little bit more cumbersome if the properties are geographically dispersed.
Another reason that I think I value clustering is you already have, when you're underwriting a deal that's next to a deal you already own, you know the rents. And in the market that you're playing in, as I know it, and the market that we're playing in, you don't always actually know the rents. The data is not super available because a lot of the mom and pops, they don't rent on the MLS or they just rent off of a sign they put in the street in some cases. So there's a lot of rental comps that you might not know about in a market that you might be just new to or entering. But if you own real estate down the street, you can say, oh, I'm underwriting two bedroom, one baths down the street, and I own a whole bunch of them right here. And I know the answer to the rents. I know what I can do with this, right?
And there's like differences between micro neighborhoods. You know, you may say, it's within the same municipality or same city, like Lake Worth here in Florida, might be a few miles north and south and east and west, but moving 5 blocks away or slightly east, the rents could go up by 20%. So you really need to know your comps, back to your point though, Larry. So,
exactly.
Yes. And what you said resonated with me, Larry. It makes our lender easier to approve the loan if they know that we have another building in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think another benefit for us is, even though we're accumulating, we're not really flipping these properties. Owning one, we know what the comps are. Once we sell it, value goes up. The whole neighborhood, whole block, the value goes up, right? Once you have something completely renovated, you sell it, you advertise it, whatever, it brings up the whole value of the neighborhood up, right? So I heard somebody doing with single family homes where they just renovate one unit to a point where they're taking a loss. But, they take this, super high end, super luxe unit and then, take a loss on renovations, but then they sell it and all the units are just okay around it. The value just appreciates so much more to make their money on, the 5 other single family homes that they have next to it. And it's like another niche strategy that I've seen for single family homes when people buy these clusters. But I think for us too, we know what the values are. Like, hey, with investors right now, hey, we renovate these units. Now the unit went from, we bought it for $55K a door to like 80 or 90K a door, right? Because we have comps, we own them, we kind of know what that looks like. So those are really good for investors to show them, hey, here's a comps directly because we own it, we know the prices, we know what it looks like. So it's also easier to get investors to show them, here's what's going on. So there's a lot of facets, and benefits from having these clusters.
Yeah, makes sense. And then the types of properties. What are you?
Yeah. So your first question, Jaron, I see very strong alignment with the properties and the markets that we target and what you just mentioned. I would say we also target workforce neighborhoods. Properties would be, maybe C plus, maybe B minus. Credit scores generally 600s or high 5s. The only difference is that we kind of have a target for what we call affordable housing, where we work with Section 8 or Chicago Housing Authority or other subsidy programs such as Housing Opportunity for Women or Chicago Housing and Health or the Veterans Association. We believe that this helps our business to be recession proof because these rents are kind of guaranteed and the increases per year are also guaranteed as well. So for example, this year, the fair market rate for 2 bedrooms in the areas that we are operating is around $1,700, while the market rate would be maybe, let me do a quick math, maybe even 30-40% less than that.
Wow. So you're saying Section 8 or some of these other public subsidies will pay you 30% or more rent per month than what the normal market rate might give you in that area?
Yes,
wow.
Guaranteed.